We're breaking this morning. President Biden announcing proposals to reform the Supreme Court. These would include term limits for Supreme Court justices, a binding code of conduct, and no immunity for crimes a former president committed in office. No immunity. Democrats are looking to make the Supreme Court a campaign issue. Watch.
We've got a Supreme Court that is actively undermining our democracy. And I think what Joe Biden will do over the next 6 months is he's going to keep drawing that to the attention of the American people and reminding them when they vote in November, the Supreme Court is on the ballot.
Biden has a brand new op-ed out this morning in the Washington Post this morning. He writes, quote, "This nation was founded on a simple yet profound principle. No one is above the law, not the president of the United States, not a justice on the Supreme Court of the United States. No one. I have overseen more Supreme Court nominations as senator, vice president, and president than anyone living today. I have great respect for our institutions and the separation of powers. What is happening now is not normal," Biden writes, and it undermines the public's confidence in the court's decisions, including those impacting personal freedoms. We now stand in a breach, writes President Biden. So basically, taking immunity away, Liz, from the president, term limits for the Supreme Court justice. Here's what they're proposing. The president would appoint a justice every 2 years to spend 18 years in active service on the court, and also a binding code of conduct for the justices is all a piece of this.
So let's go back to Obama's elections have consequences, Cheryl. What is Joe Biden and other Democrats really peeved about? That Donald Trump put 3 conservative justices on the Supreme Court, changed the balance of the court to favor conservative interpretations of the Constitution, and basically have decided in favor of many conservative issues since that happened. So, yes, Democrats would very much like to make the upcoming election about the Supreme Court, and they're right to do that, because guess what? If they're in power, they get to appoint the next Supreme Court. But it doesn't allow them to overhaul the way this court has functioned for centuries, and that's really what we're talking about here. They will get their chance if and when they win elections, basically appealing to moderate and mainstream Americans, and they have been unable to do that. In terms of Congress. And so, by the way, they can't possibly do this anyway, because you need a 2/3 vote for most of the changes.
I was going to say, because here's the amendment, the no one is above the law amendment. And so they're looking for basically a constitutional amendment. And the court, this isn't just about social issues and Roe v. Wade. And this is also a lot of business cases, a lot of economic cases, end up in front of the court as well.
Right.
Social media.
I find it super ironic that you have career politicians in their 70s and 80s who are arguing for term limits for the Supreme Court, right? Like, why wouldn't they have term limits too? But, look, it is a heck of a lot easier to win the game when you change the rules in your favor. And we've seen from the Democrats over and over and over again, they're anti-Constitution, they're anti-Supreme Court. They're the ones who are anti-democracy. And it doesn't surprise me that we're at this stage right now.
I want to ask you guys about this as well, because Kamala Harris and the media are ramping up these efforts to try and tie President Trump to Project 2025, even though the former president has repeatedly denied it's part of his platform. So Project 2025 is a plan created by the Heritage Foundation. It's described as a conservative blueprint for a future Republican administration. Even the Heritage Foundation has said that Project 2025 is entirely independent from the Trump campaign. The Wall Street Journal editorial board writes this morning, who's afraid of Project 2025? They say it's a think tank white paper. Which it is, 22 pages. And even the journal says, look, it doesn't lack for modesty. But it's also, they say, look, it's about taking the corporate tax rate down to 18%, tying welfare programs to work, Liz, deregulating health insurance markets, expanding Medicare Advantage plans, which would be good for seniors. And then the journal also points out it would rev up U.S. energy production. So why the heated debate about
the problem Democrats have is that Donald Trump can run on his record and Biden-Harris cannot, right? The policies in place in the Trump White House were excellent. And in fact, the country did extremely well under Donald Trump. what is most likely is that those policies carry over into his second term, should he win in November. And Democrats are having a big problem with that because they can't answer that successful past. So what are they doing? They've created out of a hat this Project 2025, which is sort of the mythological being that's going to subfuse itself into the Trump White House and dominate policymaking, even though everyone on the Trump team right now says, no, that's not us. It's ridiculous. And yet, boy, Democrats have an ability to glom onto something and with one voice make that pitch over and over again, and they've done it rather successfully.
Even the Journal writes not much of the Project 2025 agenda is likely to even happen, even if Republicans take the House and the Senate.
Look, the
filibustered.
And the Democrats have their own 922-page manual, their how-to playbook, that we just haven't seen it yet, right? I mean.